This week in AI, the shopping cart got an AI agent, Apple made $1 billion bet on Google, and Anthropic drew battle lines with Elon Musk.
We're going to start off with Google's Universal Commerce Protocol, a new standard that lets AI agents buy things for you with Shopify, Walmart, and Visa already signed on.
Then switching over to Apple, which, in a surprising turn of event, has selected Google's Gemini to power Siri. Anthropic ships a desktop agent and cuts XAI off from Claude, and Meta and Microsoft reveal very different visions for AI infrastructure.
Plus, some quick hits on gene therapy, personal intelligence, translation tools, and Matthew McConaughey trademarking himself. I'm looking forward to that last story. That's going to be the most fun, I think. But right now, it's time for What the AI, all the AI news you need to know in 30 minutes or less. All right, first up, we're not going to start with Matthew McConaughey. You have to wait till the end for that one. That's too much excitement for the
Such a tease. Don't you want to just jump right into talking about Matthew McConaughey?
Well, you can fast forward if you want, but
Okay.
We're going to start off with Google, of course. In the question, what when AI agents start shopping for us, who controls the checkout button? Google giving us their answer this week.
And they brought some friends.
They did. They bought some big friends. So at the NRF on January 11th, Google announced the Universal Commerce Protocol, an open standard for how AI agents buy things. Their partner list includes Shopify, Etsy, Wayfair, Target, Walmart, and on retail and Visa, MasterCard, Stripe, and Amex on payments. Over 20 partners in total signing up for this UCP.
It's a lot of partners, a lot of big name partners. What does the actual partnership do? What can we expect from this mega partnership?
Yeah, so this is like MCP, right? It's a common language between agents, retailers, and payment systems. So if you're talking to Gemini, you mentioned you want to buy a suitcase or a pair of shoes, and a buy button can appear in the conversation. It never leaves Google's surface. A retailer can serve personalized pricing, loyalty offers, member discounts, and with Google Pay, purchases can be done in one click.
I mean, I think that's pretty cool. I think it's going to be a great feature. One thing that comes to mind is, and I imagine it's on the mind of these retailers, is like who actually owns the customer in this type of interaction or partnership?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be the interesting tension, right? Like Google says the merchant stays the merchant of record. They own the relationship. They get all the data about the transaction, but the agent does control discovery, right? If you're not in the protocol, you might be invisible to AI shoppers entirely. The agent's determining what you see, not you going to a merchant site. So there is some loss of relationship between the merchant and the customer at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And am I right in remembering that OpenAI also has their own similarly flavored version of this?
Yeah, OpenAI launched their instant checkout in September, leveraging Stripe. So we've got kind of a standards war for agent. Not surprising, I guess, that commerce would be the place where we'd see some standards fights between the big players, because industry estimates put this at $3 to $5 trillion a year opportunity by 2030. So that's worth fighting for.
It's a big number, but I think like the big question, I mean, we talked a little bit about it, who owns the customer, but so many of these companies have built their entire existence and growth and strategy around brand loyalty. And does that even exist anymore in the future? If you're having an agent do this thing for you, is it the agent's brand loyalty that matters? Like who actually decides the protocol, who wins, what brand wins? This is a big question mark that could fundamentally shift how we do marketing and acquire consumers and all this type of stuff.
For sure. It'll be really interesting to see how this plays out, how the economics play out, how the different players try and treat retailers differently to keep loyalty. I can certainly imagine a world where loyalty still matters, right? Buy me a pair of Nike shoes because that's the brand I like, not just a pair of shoes. Like I'm going to designate the brand and my agent should follow my desire. But you may go, hey, I'm looking for the best X. What do you recommend? And show me some options. And there, certainly, you're going to get into something like the advertising battle over search ads now, I imagine. So it'll be really interesting to see how consumer behavior changes, what retailers do to try and own loyalty, and what if the different AI players make different choices for how to engage with retailers, and if that leads to different outcomes in terms of what you can buy. Where it would really be awful if it ended up like TV. Like the worst thing right now in technology, I think, is sports and streaming, and going, how the hell what service do I need to own to watch the game? And it's like
All of them.
just
all of
yeah,
them.
but it's impossible to figure out where to find the thing. And it would really be awful if I had to go to like Claude to buy Nike and Gemini to buy from Walmart and whatever. Like you really want this to be universal. So I hope the protocols can become universal, because it would really be awful if it became balkanized the way sports has on streaming.
Yeah, I think like one maybe, optimist point of view take on this is that your brand loyalty is only going to be bought by having a great product, right? Like
Yeah.
once the person gets the product, they like it so much that they want to buy it again the next time because there's going to be all of this runoff of like old brand loyalty that was like, oh, I want Under Armour because Steph Curry likes Under Armour. Like it's going to age out at some point. The next generation is going to not have the Steph Curry and not have that loyalty for that reason. So Under Armour is going to actually have the best product if it wants people to have that loyalty. So I think that would be a shift that would be welcome, at least from my point of view.
Yeah, if we can shift to real assessments of quality and fit for the consumer's need, like that would be better than the way a lot of people I think end up finding their products today. So that's a good point that we can always be optimistic. There's all the people who are pessimistic about what these things may do to companies and revenue and the ability to acquire customers, but there's also a positive side for what could happen.
Well, speaking about loyalty, let's talk about Apple.
Mm.
Apple has just selected Google to power Siri. Yes, Apple, the Apple.
Apple,
What do
the
you think about
privacy company, is picking the anti-privacy company
that?
to
Yes.
run their AI.
It's fascinating. So the privacy company, as you mentioned, has selected the anti-privacy company January 12th, announcing a multi-year deal where Apple's foundation models will be based on Gemini, which of course is a Google AI product. Bloomberg says that Apple's paying about $1 billion a year for use of Gemini. And then with that, they're getting access to Google's 1.2 trillion parameter model, 8 times larger than what currently powers Apple Intelligence. So if you're wondering why Siri sucks, it's because Google is using something 8 times larger and therefore exponentially more than 8 times better, I think. But pretty interesting to see this deal get announced.
What do we think's really going to happen here? I mean, obviously everybody's hope is for a Siri that doesn't suck, which is
Yeah.
a pretty low bar. Like, I like to go in with a desire for things to be better than doesn't suck. We don't want to be on the sucking scale and see how far down we go. But like, what do we think is actually going to change for users when this thing comes to fruition?
Well, Apple announced a while back that new version of Siri would be coming. And so now we can kind of get a little bit of a, forecast or crystal ball, if you will, about what that new version might look like. So the new version of Siri with iOS 26.4 is going to come sometime around March or April of this year. It's supposed to be allegedly more conversational, better cross-app intelligence, on-screen awareness. And Apple says that Gemini, this is actually an interesting distinction here, Gemini is going to run on their private cloud compute. So it's all of this, the data it's using is separate from the Google data. So it's using Apple's treasure trove of information about you, but not Google's treasure trove of information about you.
It's a really interesting choice. Yeah, and it really, it'll be interesting to see just Siri powered by Gemini and Gemini being pretty different experiences. It seems like Apple's really leaning in then to the privacy, the wrapper, the kind of control of that data and experience being their differentiation versus actually building a state-of-the-art LLM.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm a little bit of skeptic about whether it's the privacy wrapper or if it's somehow about the like competitive intelligence of like we don't want to share our data, so we won't use your data type of play, because it seems to me like there's this whole power move that could happen if they would actually share their data, because Apple knows about half of everything about me and Google knows everything else. So like imagine the power if Siri had access to both of those data sets. But they've strategically decided to keep the data sets separate, which is pretty interesting. So now Google will power both the default search engine and the AI assist on your iPhone if you are an iPhone user. And Apple will pay Google, as I mentioned, $1 billion for its AI. Google will pay Apple $20 billion for search. So there's lots of dollars flowing both ways, with most of them going in the Apple direction.
I think that did make this deal easier to get done, that it wasn't like Google had to come up with $1 billion or Apple had to come up with $1 billion from nowhere. It's like, oh, you're paying me 20. Like we can find a way to make this work among friends, as opposed to having to actually pay someone like an OpenAI or come up with a new commercial deal with an Anthropic. So that's interesting. Are they now they've done an integration with ChatGPT. They've got ChatGPT on the iPhone. Is anything going to change about that?
I mean, they said no, but you have to kind of wonder, especially as there's more and more hype about Gemini kind of winning this war for now about best model. So we'll see what comes in the future. But as of now, no change.
Yeah, if I were over at OpenAI, I'd be looking at my contract terms and termination date real
Right.
closely,
I know.
because that feels like it's there. But I'm with you. I hope these two. For years, I think people have said Apple makes the best hardware in the world, and Google makes some of the best at scale software. Can I just have like even before LLMs and Gemini, people wanted an Apple phone with a Google Assistant on it. And if they could really pull in the data from both sides, man, that would be, at least as a user, the holy grail. And now I've just got to keep debating whether I want to get an iPhone with the best apps or an Android phone with the best Gemini. And hopefully this closes the gap, but we'll find out.
Oh, and I don't think you have to wait long till the gap is further closed.
I was
So
surprised. Yeah, March, April, that's coming soon. Like that's a
yeah,
pretty exciting date.
yep, exactly. Well, transitioning from Apple and Google to Anthropic and XAI. Anthropic has cut off Elon Musk's XAI from using Claude.
So this would surprise me because like XAI was using Claude. That surprised me.
Claude is that good. Specifically, the part of Claude that is that good is Cursor, which is a commonly used feature that
Yep.
developers will use. So engineers, the XAI engineers, were often using Claude to help speed up their development. On January 9th, Anthropic actually flipped a switch without warning, and shut off their access so they could no longer use Claude for coding. And XAI co-founder Tony Wu confirmed it internally, kind of told everybody. And he said, which I thought was interesting, he said, this is good news and bad news. We're going to get a hit on productivity, but now we really have the push we need to develop our own internal coding product. So let's go build that thing.
Can I just say this is awesome, both in like Anthropic acting like XAI and just like slamming the door. It felt like a very XAI unannounced kind of big move. I liked it. And then the kind of tacit admission that Claude was better for writing code and doing development work than was Grok, which XAI has kind of tried to claim that Grok is as good or better than these models. And so kind of just an admission like, yeah, maybe the Claude thing was better. And my
Yeah.
understanding is that Anthropic's terms actually did prohibit this kind of use. So they were not it wasn't that kind of out of the blue so much as saying, hey, we're actually enforcing the terms of use for our models.
Yeah, so they do have, Section D4 in their terms of use. And this is actually the third competitor that we've seen them block in the last 7 months, enforcing those terms. So Windsurf in June, OpenAI in August, now XAI. So they have a clear pattern of sort of enforcing their terms of use, specifically trying to protect, their IP. So pretty interesting and I think good on them.
And if you haven't tried using Claude inside Cursor, I mean, highly recommend it. The guys at XAI aren't wrong. It is a really good way to write code. So if you'd like some help, Claude is pretty good. Although I hear the new GPT-5.2 codex is also even better at the long duration code stuff. So that was pretty funny. But cutting off competitors wasn't the only thing Anthropic got done last week. They also shipped something new. So that's good.
Great.
They shipped something called Claude Cowork, a desktop agent that actually works with files on your computer.
Okay, so this is Claude, I think, is really, like we just talked about, great use for developer, but this is like Claude for the rest of your work if you're not writing code, right?
That's the pitch. So Claude Code was really good at multi-step, longer duration tasks in coding. And I think a lot of people have been hacking it together by putting things into files that weren't code and then telling the Claude to just using it like it was code, just mess with my files. And so that's really, they built this into the Mac app now. So you grant the Claude access to a folder through the Mac app. It's got kind of a different section. There's chat, and then there's code, and then there's Cowork, and it can read files, edit files, create new files, update you on progress. You can kind of see it working. You describe the outcomes that you want, and the agent figures out how to do it.
Very cool. I imagine you've played with it.
So I actually use it to write the show this week. I got this access. I had to play with it, of course, and it was pretty simple. I had a single file that had a pretty long set of instructions. I actually used Claude to help write them on the style of the show, the way we write the script, the kind of things we wanted. And then I created a file that I just kept running list of stories, either URLs of stories I'd read or headlines that I wanted to cover. And then I said, open up Claude Cowork, and I said, Claude, take a look at the instructions in the general file, look at the script stories, and write me a script and a briefing on all the stories. So if somebody's want to read all the stories, I can get the basics. And it worked for 5 or 7 minutes and did a pretty darn good job. And then one of my favorite features of these kinds of tools is I edited the script because it was good, but not great. And I sent my new script back and said, hey, here's what I changed your script to. Can you update your instructions so the next time you get a little closer to what I like? And it made a couple of meaningful instruction changes to its instructions list to do a better job next time. So already providing value in at least my life.
I love that. And that's something we used to talk about a lot. And I think we haven't explicitly said in a while that the great thing about using AI is when it doesn't make the mark, you can train it, you can give it coaching and it relearns from that. So thank you for reminding us about that. What should I be worried about as a user if I'm gonna use this thing?
Yeah, I mean, this is a powerful capability, right? And it's got access to your files. So it can delete files, it can overwrite information. You give it
Mhm.
access to a specific folder. So make sure you got a backup, you know what you're doing. And there are the ability for things like prompt injection. So malicious actors can, if you put certain kinds of things into your files or requests, it can cause issues. And it's also only available for Max subscribers on the Mac desktop app. So be ready to pay $100 a month if you want to try it, at least for now. There's a lot of history of these things coming to less expensive versions over time, but that's where it's at today.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's move on from Claude Cowork to, some more traditional enterprise companies. We'll start off two infrastructure stories this week that show, I think, where AI competition is actually being fought, not just in the models, but in the power plants and community relations. So interesting.
Pretty interesting. So two companies, two approaches. Let's start with Meta. Tell us what you got.
All right. Mark Zuckerberg, of course, the CEO of Meta, announced Meta Compute, a new organization for scaling AI infrastructure. The numbers are pretty big, tens of gigawatts this decade, hundreds long term, hundreds of megawatts, a lot of power. Meta spent 72 billion on AI in 2025, and they're committing 600 billion in American infrastructure by 2028. Deals everywhere, 10 billion plus with Google Cloud, 14 billion CoreWeave, 10 billion joint venture for a 2 gigawatt data center. So they're working with a lot of different partners to build out their data center capacity.
And what's the sort of theory behind that?
I think their theory just comes down to infrastructure is the moat. I mean, models can get copied, whoever can have, access to the best chips, but then a place to run them with the right power and cooling and infrastructure. Those things take years. They're physical builds. They take a long time to permit, to go through environmental review, to get the power hookups. So they're really thinking of that, I think, as the durable advantage in terms of how they build a moat around AI.
I mean, it's super interesting to think about Meta's strategy because, like, they tried to be in the model game, and there was a hot second there where Mark Zuckerberg said that Llama was the best model on the market, and I think
Yeah,
that has not proved to be the case. And
not true.
they tried to get in the hardware game, and they had the like AI glasses, and now they're trying to get in the infrastructure game. So it's like I kind of feel bad for them because they just keep trying to throw their hat in the race somewhere. So, but maybe this will be the one that's the race for them. We don't know, but. It's interesting
Yep.
to see that them trying to take this pivot. But so Microsoft also in on this action.
Everybody
What
wants
are
to
they
make an
doing?
announcement about their infrastructure play. So, Microsoft announcing their community first AI infrastructure and really making 5 commitments to communities hosting data centers, covering residential electricity cost increases, becoming water positive, paying full property taxes, so not looking for tax breaks, investing in local workforce training. So, really kind of leaning into the we're going to be a good partner, a good neighbor to the communities where they're building these data centers, as opposed to the just how fast can we build stuff angle.
I thought the whole stereotype was that tech companies are fighting for tax incentives everywhere. Like how what's that about?
I think this really shows you how much the conversation is changing. Brad Smith saying since 2024, they've really seen communities want jobs. This year, we're starting to see issues about electricity price increases, water price increases, and the sense of a real backlash building against the how rapidly we're building out AI data centers. So it seems like Microsoft is betting on a little bit of community relations outreach in addition to just physical infrastructure build out as their strategy for, actually being able to stay in the lead.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, Meta bets on kind of scale. Microsoft bets on the social license. So it'll be interesting to watch that play out.
Might need to be a both and. Might need to be a both
It
and.
has to be a both and, right? Like, I don't think they were going to do a deal together though.
No, I don't think so. But I mean, it's just we talked about the Bernie Sanders call for a moratorium on data center building, and it really highlights to you the Microsoft angle, how much pushback these tech companies are feeling from local communities. I mean, these data centers have to go somewhere. I think there's a lot of NIMBY. Like everybody goes, yeah, I love more AI, but like don't put it in my backyard. And pretty soon all the backyards are declared off limits, and they've got a problem. So they've got to both be able to physically build these things and find communities willing to host them, and that will be maybe a bigger challenge over the next decade than just enhancing the capability of the models technically.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of proves the point we were talking about the moratorium, though, that like the Bernie Sanders didn't need to put a moratorium for Microsoft to still have been planning this and have it be part of their back pocket and something that they know long term they're going to need to do to win. So it's pretty good to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's pivot to a quick hit from biotech. Basecamp Research
Mm.
announced Eden, first AI models for programmable gene insertion.
So, my wife's a doctor, but I did not study biology since high school. What is that? What does that mean? What is
So
programmable gene insertion?
You take the human genome, which is, gigantic, and you can give it a target site. They give this AI a target site, and it will design proteins that can insert genetic materials into that specific target site that you've asked for. And then this demonstrated that over, 10,000 disease-related locations, they've been deploying this. And in lab tests, CAR T cells they created show over 90% tumor clearance. So it's a significant possible advancement.
That's a these are the kind of stories that I don't understand fully but love. I mean, the kind of application of AI into making the world a better place in medicine or healthcare or
Mhm.
energy or any other area. How big is a model that does this? Is this like a small little thing or it's like an LLM class? Like how big is this?
I mean, it's pretty big. It's 28 billion parameters. It's, along the lines of something you'd see from like GPT-4. NVIDIA's venture arm is actually invested in this capability.
That's pretty cool. I imagine though it's still a ways away. I mean, this is lab tests, right? Not clinical trials or patients. Where are we at on getting this out into to patients?
Yeah, they're lab tests, not clinical trials. The shift has to go from sort of like trial and error to figuring out how to design and then implement at scale. So, like you always talk about, what's the next bottleneck? So the question is, if AI can design the gene therapy and the gene therapy works, then how do you get the economics of the actual drug development right? Does it get faster and cheaper? Does there become a regulatory approval bottleneck? How does it actually get in the, mass produced and shipped and put into production in a way that is economically viable. So that's the next question.
I do think this is the underappreciated part of technology advancement is not just the discovery of the thing that can work, but the diffusion of it into making an impact in the world. And it's great to see that so many places we're seeing AI move into that diffusion challenge bottleneck. I mean, not that those are good bottlenecks, but it's better to be there than if the models aren't working and we don't have anything to diffuse yet. Place. So
That's true.
that's fun to see.
Yep, agreed. Well, let's talk about Google one more time today. Google launched personal intelligence for Gemini. The name says it all.
Personal intelligence. How personal is personal?
It's pretty personal. I mean, I mentioned before, Google pretty much knows everything
It's got a
about
lot
you.
of personal data. Like
Got a
it's
lot of
pretty
personal
personal.
data. It has your Gmail, so it knows who you're talking to. It has all your photos. It knows where you are, what you're doing. It's got your YouTube, so it knows what you're watching. It knows your search history, which, for some people is more scary than others. And it connect all that stuff to sort of build a whole profile about you. So Gemini actually will then reason across all of those things proactively, and it'll connect an email thread to a video you watched, to a photo you took, and that cross app sort of context happens without you having to tell it, look here, look here, look here. It just does it in the background.
Yeah, this is kind of like the holy grail from a personal assistant vision of like, can it just figure out where to, I don't want to tell it where to look. And I want to ask a question and get the answer. So this seems pretty cool. What are they saying about privacy though? Because I know that is often a concern when Google in particular, who has so much data, starts leveraging it. People go, oh my God, what are they going to do with the data? What kind of privacy controls are they offering?
So, I mean, I think the biggest control is it's off by default. So, you are not default opted into this thing. You actually have to go choose to use it. And then when you choose to use it, you can choose which apps you connect. So, if you are fine with it knowing your Gmail data, but not your YouTube data, that sort of power, you have the power of choice there. And then Google, importantly, says that they're not training the model on your data. They're just
Mm.
sort of retrieving the data about you to improve the service, not actually to train their model. So this is available for AI Pro and Ultra subscribers in the US, beta only. But as you mentioned, a potential for a huge leap forward in the sort of automated assistant category.
Yeah, I mean, Google, I think really leaning into their advantage of having so much of your data. I mean, I think probably for me more than Apple, they've got the critical stuff. And I actually did get access to this just this morning before we started recording. I got off the wait list. I got into my subscription, and so I just did a quick query like I'm on a flight this afternoon. What time's my flight? The kind of thing is maybe in my calendar, maybe in my email, whatever. Where am I staying? What's my rental car? And it nailed it. I mean, just instantly came back with all the information, references to back the stuff. But again, I think that being able to ask those kinds of questions without having to say, look in my email for an email from American Airlines, is really awesome. And if they can nail that, I think it's a huge advantage for Gemini, at least as a personal assistant, if not as your primary. Like, it's very different how you use ChatGPT most days. It's not the common question, but it is, I think, a really useful set of questions. And this seems to be a big advantage to Google if they can get this right.
Yeah, and I think this is where people's revealed preferences really will come out. Like, we all know your revealed preference of like, you'll give up the privacy for the efficiency any day, no problem there, right? So you're willing to give it all your data so you can, other people are like, I wouldn't give it any of my data because I don't want to be, surveilled by big tech or something like that. And so seeing where people fall on that spectrum, I kind of feel like the revealed preference is people are going to want the helpful information and be willing to give up some amount of privacy for that. But it'll be interesting to see how that actually shakes out.
I always think this is I won't say a misnomer, but people are a little off base in what they say they want because you've already given the access. I mean, like your Gmail is stored at Google. Like they have they're just using it for you in a new way. But I think even people who say I'm concerned about this stuff ultimately typically have their data stored at one of these services. And so, I think that's a pretty strong indication. And it's really not a change of the privacy status. Like Google had your data. They were using it to show you your email. Now they're using it to give you an answer to a question about your email. Not really that different. I think that's where I don't think those privacy concerns are going to end up being a big deal in the end.
I mean, it's a fascinating point because it is actually very much not different, but it feels different, right? And like that's where people I think sometimes get creeped out. Like, oh, now I'm aware of it, and I don't like that.
Yeah, but then you forget once it tells you what time your flight is and you're on time. That's going to be easy.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, two quick stories to wrap us up, and we don't want to go long. So first up, OpenAI quietly launching ChatGPT Translate. No announcement, just appeared at chatgpt.com/translate. So new feature.
New feature. And is this like competitor to Google Translate?
Yeah, so Google's trying to become a better AI assistant. ChatGPT going to come in on the Translate game. Free 50 plus languages. It handles text, voice, and some images. The kind of differentiator versus the standard Google Translate is it's got some style controls: business, formal, academic, explain it like a child. Translation is a creative task, not just word substitution. But it's out there, kind of just a Google Translate alternative.
How is the products compare? How's it doing compared to Google?
Yeah, I mean, Google's just been at this a lot longer, right? 200 languages, not 50. It does documents and websites, real-time conversation. ChatGPT does none of that. It's on the web only now. But I think it is another sign that ChatGPT is both trying to get into more of the not chatbot use cases for AI and feels the need to kind of increase its surface area for usage in places that, we may not have thought as part of the AI battleground, but this is one Google owns, right? Like Translate is a Google Translate feature for most internet users today. And ChatGPT wants to take a little bit away.
All right. Well, we got 3 minutes, Jeff. You got to tell me why you brought up Matthew McConaughey.
All right. Last story of the week. Matthew McConaughey trademarked himself, literally trademarked himself.
What about himself did he trademark? Is this like the JLo 90s?
Submitted some voice and likeness images and voice elements. 8 trademarks were approved, including a sound mark on. I'm going to do my best. Matthew McConaughey here. All right. Okay. So, he put that in there and got it all. Video clips, phrases, it got the federal trademark. So there you go.
Does this actually work?
Nobody knows. His own lawyers admit they don't know. It's an untested strategy. And McConaughey is not really anti-AI, right? He's kind of an AI fan, but he's clearly trying to take a little control over how his image and likeness are being used, his consent, his ability to negotiate economic terms. So this is, I thought, a really interesting approach to trademark yourself and give yourself some different legal standing in terms of people representing you or recreating your likeness or your iconic catchphrases.
I kind of love this. This is full circle for Matthew McConaughey. He's, in case you missed it, he actually started out in law school before he became an actor. So now he's back at the legal battles. But so we're watching sort of a new legal strategy being written in real time.
Yeah, we are. And we don't know what'll happen. We don't know if it'll work. We don't know where it'll go, but it'll be interesting to watch and maybe serve as a model for, in general, how we want to handle images, likenesses, people, actors, famous people, regular people who have something to say, and the ability of AI to copy them. Like, what's the legal background for that going to be? And I would not have put Matthew McConaughey leading the charge to define such things on my bingo card, but this is what 2026 is all about. Things that weren't on your bingo card.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens with his trademark.
Indeed. See who he gets to sue first for trademark violation. I'll be watching that one carefully. Will be fun.
Maybe it's going to be you for quoting him just now.
You know what? Nothing would make me happier than to meet Matthew McConaughey in a deposition where I had to do my best Matthew McConaughey impersonation. I'd have to muss my hair up to fit in a little bit, but I would be there for it. That'd be a thrill. Well, I think that's it for this week, Annie. But as always, we'll be back next week with all the news in AI in 30 minutes or less. I will see you next week.
See you next week.
Ready to expand your AI knowledge? Want to become the go-to AI expert in your organization? Take the next step with Upstart's AI certification for financial services. This comprehensive course simplifies the fundamentals of artificial intelligence for financial services professionals. Both the course and this podcast are brought to you by Upstart, whose leading AI lending marketplace connects millions of consumers to banks and credit unions that leverage Upstart's AI technology to deliver superior credit products, from personal loans to auto loans to home equity lines of credit. If you learned something useful this week, hit subscribe on YouTube or leave us a rating on iTunes or Spotify. Your support can help others discover What the AI. And finally, share your biggest AI questions and insights with us at email@whattheai.fm. We really do read every message, and we do our best to cover them all on the show.